Welcome to The Secret Sauce. I'm glad you're here. I'm your host, Kip Schubert. And as educators, we need to own our stories. We need to share how we've climbed mountains that seemed impossible. And in the process, discovered that secret sauce that we all have. Because it's with that secret sauce, we reach back over those mountains and become the Sherpa that our schools and our staff and our students need. Be sure and follow the podcast. I don't want you to miss an episode. And please reach out to me. I would love to come to your school and share my secret sauce with your staff and students. Our stories, our experiences, they matter. They are what connect us and empowers the development of authentic relationships that our schools, our communities, our world desperately needs right now. So let's get real, let's get raw, and let's get vulnerable and dive into our next episode. I've got a good friend of mine here to this afternoon. He is a current assistant principal at Sunray Elementary in Pasco County, Florida. He is a fellow member with me on the Road to Awesome family of authors, and he has wrote a book called Becoming the Change. His name is Dan Wolfe. Dan, welcome. And why don't you tell us a little bit more about yourself and about the book.
All right. Well, thank you so much, Kip, for having me on the show and everything. I really appreciate it. I have been an educator for 25 years now. I've held various roles as a teacher, a math instructional coach, a district curriculum specialist, where I serviced 18 Title I schools, K through 12. I've also been an assistant principal for at least 10 of those years. And I am currently in the principals pool, the Preparing New Principals program here within my county. So that's what my next goal is to be, is hopefully to be a principal in the next year or so. So that's pretty much about me with my book and everything, Becoming the Change. It just recently was released June 1st. It's on Amazon, is where you can get the book. Just to give you a little backstory of how this book came to be. In December of 2019, I decided to write a daily blog. One of the things that I'm very passionate about is social emotional learning, or otherwise known as SEL. And our district had gone ahead, and I was a part of a district committee to write K through 12 social emotional learning standards, to have that continuum, to kind of help develop the whole child. And because I always say that if academics is the lock, I believe SEL is the key to open that lock to all the possibilities for our kids. So what I decided to do was I wanted to just put my thoughts, into a blog. And I'm always a big fan of quotes. And so what I do is I take a famous quote and I analyze it and apply to our own moral compass and the 5 areas of social emotional learning. And just to kind of tell you a little bit about what those 5 areas are for your listeners, or elements, you have self-awareness. And self-awareness is like knowing our inner selves and what makes us tick. I like to think of it as like we're a mechanic, how a mechanic knows their own car. We are our own mechanic for ourselves, so we know what makes us tick. Then we have self-management. And with that, that's where we're in the driver's seat of our own lives. So we control our thoughts and actions and feelings. We essentially control our own destiny. And those 2 are like our inner selves. Now, when I look at the other 2, our outer selves, we have social awareness, and that allows us to look at things through the perspectives of others, and have a lot of acceptance and unity. And I think out of any of the areas that I'm talking about right now, I think that is the one, as a society, that is something that really needs to be worked on, not only for adults, but also for kids too, in order to make this world a better place. With them have a relationship skills, and that's having those innate qualities with others. And that's also including ourselves, because if we don't have a good relationship with ourselves, how can we have a good relationship with others? And that's right. Looked at as our outer selves. And then what wraps all that up is responsible decision making is the 5th one. As author and podcaster Seth Godin once said, decisions are choices. And these decisions not only affect ourselves, but they affect others. And we want to make sure when we're making those decisions to have an open heart and an open mind. So with those 5 principles, I apply that to whatever quote I'm analyzing, and then I ask the readers what it means to them. And then, because one thing I found is when we read a quote, if we read it again 5 years from now, it can have a totally different meaning than it did then because of the experiences we've had. So that's what I have within that to kind of reflect through things. And then from there, I created a podcast based on what I wrote, just the daily readings. And then the pandemic hit. And, as everybody knows, in March 2020. And so I said, you know what? I said, well, when I'm not doing, my regular school day job, I feel like I need to give something back and be able to. I'm going to go ahead and write a book. And that's where Becoming the Change came in. I created a self-assessment where you're able to analyze where you currently are in those 5 areas based on statement questions. And the beauty of that part is you can take the assessment as many times because, again, just like the quotes mean something different, you're going to give yourself different answers 6 months from now, 6 years from now, because you're going to be in a different spot. The biggest thing that I encourage your listeners and anyone that reads the book is to make sure that they are really being vulnerable and really answering these honestly, because that's the only way you're going to get to it, to see where you lie in those 5 elements. And then what it will show you is your strengths. And I call them limitations. I don't like to call them weaknesses. So with limitations, with limits, the only limits we have are the limits really that we put on ourselves within that. So, and then what the book then does is each chapter focuses on a different one of those elements. And throughout the book, it gives you strategies and different ways to help increase in that area. And I have what are called compass checks along the way, which basically, because I look at these 5 areas, it's kind of like, how you have a compass when you're lost in the woods and everything, a compass helps find your way. Well, with this, if you go ahead and you have self-awareness in the center of that compass, and then the 4 cardinal directions are those other elements, that's our moral compass. And that's our compass in life. When life gets hard, we rely on one of those elements to help us see it through, and the beauty of the book, at least in my opinion, is at the end of each chapter is, I don't know if you remember those books from the 70s, 80s, and 90s of the Choose Your Own Adventure.
Right.
Where you go ahead and if you go one page, it'll go to some destination. You got another one. Now mine doesn't have like dragons or anything in it like the books I grew up on. But what you're able to do is choose your pathway, because all of us, have our own pathway to finding our true selves. So if I have strengths and self-awareness and I want to continue improving that in that area, I may read that chapter. When I finish that chapter, I have a choice. I can either reread that chapter again or pick another area, again, that I want to enhance. So you're choosing your own adventure of your life. So that's essentially what the book, and what my hope is that the reader reads this time and time again after they apply strategies and things to really see that growth, because it's all about the process.
One thing that you've talked about that I hope the listeners pick up on is that this book is actually a great tool to becoming their best self. And that's part of the title, 5 Essential Elements towards being your best self and becoming the change. And I think for us as educators, if we're in administrators or whatever role that we're in, if we're really going to make the impact that the kids need, our communities need, our world needs, we have to be our best self first. And from what I've heard you describe in your book, it's a great tool for us to go back into and figure out who that best self is, what areas we need to work on within those 5 elements of SEL. So I wanted to ask you, was there a defining moment or maybe a particular relationship that really ignited you on this path and passion for social emotional learning and leading to you writing Becoming the Change?
I think it's experiences and things that we had in life as it happens. And yes, there's been, recent events and things, but I think something, if I really had to think back, and this was before I even knew these 5 elements existed, was when I was 17 years old. My dad had unexpectedly passed away of a heart attack. It was during homecoming week, senior year and everything.
Oh, man.
My life just kind of, everything just crashed. My brother was 10, I'm 17. My mom's now, raising the both of us. And I was just lost. I didn't know where to go and what to do. But I knew I had to make decisions. I'm on the verge of college, what pathway I'm going to choose. So that's where when I think back, I was trying to be that responsible decision maker. So as one of the elements within there. One of the things also is if it wasn't for my friends, they came right to my rescue, so to speak. Actually, the whole school did, just to, putting cards on, my car and everything. Anything you need, Dan, just let us know. They were there for me every step of the way. So the relationship skills, they helped pull me from the depths of all that I was experiencing. And then I had to come to that self-awareness of where I was now. Okay, this is what's happened. I now, have to learn to manage my emotions, still experience my emotions too, because I'm going through grieving and everything, but also be there for my brother, to be there for my mom, and then also even just to be there for myself too, because I got to take care of myself. Because like I said, if you can't take care of yourself, how can you take care of others? And then that's where that social awareness piece came in. I recognizing that they needed me too, that they were hurting too, and we needed to get through it together. So really, and I say this because it also put me on the path towards education. I was already leaning towards that field to begin with, but this really solidified it, going through what I had gone through, and then just my experiences over time. And just it led me to being a part of that SEL work for the district. I believe everything in life, even though we don't know sometimes, even when it's our struggles, happens for a reason. We don't know why at the time it's happening, but it's brought me to this point. And, though I've experienced hurt and pain like everybody else has, I've also experienced, feelings of triumph and overcoming things and not giving up and learning to give back to others. And I think that's the relationship. I think if anything, it's a relationship with myself, getting to know myself, love myself, and know that I matter, and then letting other people know that they matter.
I love that you shared that and were vulnerable enough and to get real with us there, because, one thing I talk about a lot is climbing mountains. And, a lot of mine was a recovery from alcoholism. Mm-hmm. And I had some issues with my father, but not like yours. But, we climb those mountains, and like you said, there's those struggles become our strength. Those adversities become our advantage. And we end up reaching back over those mountains and using those experiences to help other people up. And you're doing that through SEL, through your passion with that. And is that kind of the same story behind your passion for servant-minded leadership too?
It definitely put me on the pathway, just observing some of, you always have those different role models and things with teachers and professors and things, and just watching how some of them, how much they cared and put the needs of others before themselves. And just experiences that mentors that I've had over time doing those same kind of things and leading with that servant mindset is just something that, and that's why even just for my Twitter, handle and everything is serve, lead, and inspire, because those are the three principles, or I like to call my mantra, that I live by every day. And it's even set on my phone. When it goes off for my alarm in the morning, it reminds me of those things, because I'm going to always, no matter what position I've ever held, I'm always going to serve in that position. And in my role now as an assistant principal, I serve my students, I serve my teachers, my principal, everybody, that the community, because I always look at titles are just titles. It's what you do behind the title that means the most, and letting people know that how important they are, because I think that's something that's often. And I think the experience that I had with not being able to have closure with my dad and being able to do those kinds of things, that's why I always tell people, we always say, don't go to bed angry, those kind of things like that. These are these kind of incidents. You don't think it could ever happen to you or whatever, and just letting people know that they matter, because you just don't know what tomorrow is going to bring. And, and at the end of the day, the things that you get might bother you or whatever, is it really worth getting that bothered over it? Because
Right.
again, we can only control ourselves and our response to it. And we may not be happy about an outcome or whatever, but we can't, some things we can't change. We can only work on ourselves. So
those choices you're talking about,
yes.
coming back to those choices again. And one of the things in the secret sauce that I use a lot is go the second mile. And it's the same thing as that servant-minded leadership. And, I don't, whether I'm in the classroom or with the soccer team or with my family, one of the things that I try to strive to do is I don't ask them to do anything that I'm not willing to go do myself. And I usually get out in front and go do all that stuff extra and go the second mile to show them and to lead them about service, because getting through my recovery, one of the big things was to put my focus on to serving other people and get out of my own head and my own pity party and how bad things were for me, and instead use all those things to benefit and impact other people, which made a huge difference in me being able to overcome things. And now it's given me it really is a big part of my why. And that's one of the things that when I was reading up on you really drew me in, was that servant-minded leadership. I love that. I think that our society is so focused on what we get, and success is measured by what we get. And it's really the opposite. It's measured by what we give.
And how we make people feel.
Right.
And that's one thing, even just as when I left the classroom, because we're always teachers, no matter what position. That's just my opinion with that part. But one of the promises that I made when I left the classroom, and I continue to make this today, is I let people know, if I ever forget what it's like to be in the classroom, I need you to call me out on it. I need, because I want to have that pulse and look at it through their eyes. No matter who I'm talking to, I want to look at it through their perspective, because if it's important to them, it's important to me, and I've got to let them know that, because that's, it's all about those. It's about relationships and building those, because if you build that trust with others and you're loyal to them, they'll be loyal to you, and that's what formulates a strong school and a strong bond.
Yeah, and I just love that. And I love that you go back to the relationship part too. It's just so important. And I know there's some people that get so far to one side of that, and I kind of call it the kumbaya and the s'mores around the campfire. You got to have a balance. But those building relationships isn't just all about that. It's hold hands and talk. It's accountability. That's holding somebody hard is holding them accountable, which is hard for a lot of people to do. I know it's probably a struggle as an administrator, because everybody wants to be liked, but at the same time, loving someone is holding them accountable too. And I've experienced that, good and bad, with administrators. But being from Woodland Park, where I am, and the political climate here, and you in Florida and the political climate there, we talked before the show about that a little bit, and I just want you to share a little bit, or what you can, maybe some advice for other educators who maybe live in some areas that are politically chaotic, and how do you navigate that and still thrive in that passion for social emotional learning and building relationships?
Well, I think one of the things, because it is a fine line within regards to that, and again, it goes back to what are the things that we can control. We can't control what bills or laws or whatever come down or whatever, but there's always going to be different avenues and different things. And again, I believe that, we want to be able to develop the whole child. And we always hear that, developing the whole child, but it's not just the academic side of it. It's the social, emotional, behavioral, however you want to call it. And that's the thing. And, in education, we call things so many, it's the same thing, but it's called 18 different names, just because it doesn't fit into the status quo in certain states. And it is what it is, but it's just really working on, we talk a lot about, like at our school, we don't have expectations. We have what are called, we have commitments, because the word commitment is more binding. It's commitments, how we conduct ourselves in our PLC meetings, commitments, for, bus behavior, cafeteria behavior, those kinds of things. And like one of the slogans that I tell our kids is, my job is to keep you safe, and your job is to help keep it safe. It's that partnership. It's that bond. And that's just something that you want to go ahead and just foster with them, when they, because I serve as a Title I school. And, that's been most of my experience my entire career, and I wouldn't trade it for the world. Because if I can just help put them on a pathway to be their best selves and let them know that they matter, and that, the circumstances around you are not going to define you. You define yourself through your thoughts and actions. And basically, let me help you be your guide. I mean, I'll be their Jiminy Cricket. I mean, a lot of them probably don't know who Jiminy Cricket is nowadays, but I mean, for some of the listeners, they'll know. But those are those kinds of things, because, and like we said beforehand, I said if I had to choose, between having all the kids be Einsteins and everything, or having them be, um, people that help change the world and make it a better place by being kind to one another and things like that. I'll take that any day of the week. That matters to me, because that to me is going to be more memorable than how much you have in a bank or anything else like that. It's going to be the impact and the imprint you left on the lives of others. And that's all that matters.
Yeah, absolutely. I encourage our listeners to get a copy of Becoming the Change. Where can they get that, Dan?
It's on Amazon. So if you go to the Amazon website and you just type in, Becoming the Change and Dan Wolfe, it should pop up and everything. It's got the image of a butterfly with the 5 elements. And again, the purpose behind that butterfly is, again, as a butterfly evolves and everything, goes from a caterpillar and evolves into a butterfly, we're evolving as human beings. And it's a process. We're a process in the making as well.
Yeah, I want to encourage you guys that are listening to check that book out. I think it'd be a great tool for you becoming your best self. And again, like Dan just referenced, it's making the money and the status and the job you hold and how far you get up the corporate ladder, or whatever you achieve, whatever success you achieve professionally or personally, all that stuff matters little if you're not your best self, if you don't love yourself, if you don't love others, if you're not kind, if you're not making an impact on this world, if you're not making it a better place, if you're not leaving it better than you found it. And I think in education, we get that backwards so often. We think if we go heavy academics, we're going to turn out these kids that are just rock stars in the corporate world. Well, if they're, pardon my French, but shitty human beings, then what does it matter? And so I love that your passion is in that SEL and servant-minded leadership. And again, guys listening, check out that book, Becoming the Change. Check out Dan Wolfe on Twitter. What's your Twitter handle again?
It's serve, lead, inspire. And with serve, it doesn't have the E. And again, for your listeners, it's not that I can't spell. I'm just limited by the number of characters. So that's why it's like that. So just, I want to put that out there.
Yeah, I'm Twitter challenged too. Check him out on social media. And guys, on this podcast, in the comments on Spotify and Podbean and on social media, I will post or comment with all of Dan's links to the book on Amazon. So Dan, if you'll send that over to me, I'll post that in the comments. And I have thoroughly enjoyed our time together this evening. Thank you for taking your time out of a conference at Universal Studios in beautiful Florida to talk with me. And again, guys, become the change. Focusing on being your best self. Dan, thanks for coming.
Thank you so much for having me.
Hey, we appreciate you listening to our podcast. Let's connect and impact lives together. Leave me a comment on this episode or find me on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, YouTube at The Secret Sauce with Kip Schubert. We would be honored if you would share this episode on your social media. Continue to share your story. It matters. Reach back over that mountain. Every educator, every student needs to feel loved, heard, and valued. So dish out that secret sauce and be that Sherpa to guide others to the summit. Till next time, let's stay all in and all together.